The room was cold, too cold for living bodies. The air carried the sharp smell of metal and chemicals, and every sound echoed as if the walls themselves wanted to remind the captives that escape was impossible. Dozens of people sat inside cages made of glass and steel. Their eyes were tired, their bodies weak, but their silence was the loudest thing in the room. No one dared to speak, because everyone knew the guards hated voices. Tall figures with gray skin and glowing eyes moved between the cages. They were not human. Their armor was black and smooth, and their arms ended in long, sharp tools that could cut, burn, or bind. These were the aliens who had taken the captives from their homes, their families, their lives. To the aliens, humans were not people. They were resources, nothing more than animals to be used. The sound of heavy doors sliding open broke the silence. A single figure entered, taller than the others, with silver marks running down his head. This was the commander. His steps were slow, calm, and full of control. Everyone inside the cages shrank back, trying not to catch his eyes. They had seen before what happened when he pointed at someone. He stopped in front of a cage where a young woman sat. Her skin was pale, her body trembling from hunger and fear. Her eyes lifted only for a second, and then she lowered them again. But that 1 second was enough. The commander tapped the glass with a long claw, and the door hissed open. 2 guards rushed in, grabbing the woman by her arms. She tried to resist, but her voice broke before it became a scream. The other prisoners turned away. They could not watch. They knew where she was going. Everyone had heard the whispers, the horror of what the aliens did to women taken into the lower chambers. They were never seen again, and their cries haunted the nights for those who remained. The guards dragged the woman across the cold floor. She begged, her words sharp with fear. But the aliens did not understand or did not care. Her body shook as she tried to pull away, but the metal cuffs tightened around her wrists, glowing with blue energy that burned her skin. At the far end of the room, a young man stood among the others. He had said nothing since his capture. His eyes were steady, watching every detail. His face gave away nothing, but inside his chest burned a fire. He had seen enough, and he knew this was the moment. The woman was forced down onto her knees, her head pulled back by the metal collar the guards locked around her neck. The commander raised his hand, and a strange device flickered to life in front of him. A glowing screen showed shapes and words in alien symbols, and then an image appeared. It was the diagram of a body, broken into numbers, lines, and pieces. The woman's body. She was no longer human to them. She was data. She was property. Her eyes filled with tears as the guards tightened the chains, holding her like she was nothing more than a machine to be tested. She looked around the room, desperate for someone to help, but no one moved. No one even lifted their head. Fear was stronger than hope in this place, except for the man in the shadows. He did not look away. He did not lower his head. His eyes stayed locked on the commander, and slowly his hands closed into fists. He had waited long enough, and he knew the others were too broken to act. If someone did not stand now, there would be no end to the horror. The commander gave the order. The guards began to pull the woman toward a glowing doorway at the side of the chamber. Her cries grew sharper, her feet scraping against the floor as she tried to resist. The light from the doorway spread across the walls, bright and unnatural, like the mouth of something hungry, waiting to swallow her whole. The man stepped forward. It was only a small movement, just one step, but it was enough to break the stillness. The sound of his foot against the floor echoed through the cages, and the other prisoners looked up in shock. No one ever moved. No one ever dared. But now, one human had. The guards froze for a second, confused. The commander turned his glowing eyes toward him. For the first time since he had been captured, the man spoke. His voice was steady, low but clear enough for everyone to hear. "Stop!" The word cut through the room like a blade. The guards tightened their grip on the woman, and she looked at him with wide, desperate eyes. The commander's face twisted into something close to amusement. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. The silence stretched long, heavy, until the commander gave a slow, cruel smile. He raised his hand, pointing at the man, and the guards moved closer. The other prisoners shrank back again, waiting for the sound of pain, the proof that no one could resist. But the man did not lower his head. His fists tightened, his jaw locked, and his eyes burned with a fire the aliens had never seen before. He was not afraid. He was not broken. The woman was still on her knees, her breath fast and uneven, but in her eyes something changed. For the first time since her capture, she saw not just fear, but hope. Someone had stood. Someone had dared to speak. The guards reached for the man, and the air filled with tension so sharp it felt like the room itself was holding its breath. Something was about to break. The guards closed in on the man, their heavy steps shaking the steel floor. Their glowing eyes scanned him like he was nothing more than another weak prisoner about to be broken. Yet he did not step back. He stood tall, his fists tight at his sides, his gaze fixed on the alien commander. The other captives held their breath. They had seen what happened when anyone resisted. Punishment was swift, cruel, and final. Yet this man looked as if he had already accepted that. He did not move with fear. He moved with purpose. The first guard reached for him, a sharp tool in hand, ready to strike across his chest. The alien's claw swung fast, glowing edges slicing through the air. The man twisted his body, and the strike missed by inches. Gasps spread among the prisoners. No one had ever seen a human dodge like that. The second guard lunged, wrapping a long arm around his neck, but the man drove his elbow back into the alien's ribs. A heavy crack echoed, and the guard stumbled, confused by the pain. Humans were not supposed to fight like this. The commander's smile vanished. His silver marks glowed brighter as he stepped forward, raising his hand. The air shimmered, and strange energy crackled around the chamber. Machines on the walls came alive, projecting alien symbols that meant nothing to the prisoners, but everything to the guards. This was not just discipline now. This was control. The woman, still locked in her chains, watched with wide eyes. Her heart pounded with fear and hope at the same time. She wanted to scream for him to stop, to save himself, but the sound caught in her throat. She knew that if he fell, no one would ever rise again. The commander barked in his harsh alien tongue, and more guards entered the room. Their bodies were thick with armor, and their tools were sharper, longer, built to cut and tear. They moved in perfect formation, circling the man. He breathed slow, steady. His eyes shifted, counting them, judging their speed, their angles. He had no weapon. He had no armor. Yet he had something none of them could understand. Resolve. One guard charged. The man dropped low, sweeping his leg across the floor, and the alien fell hard, crashing into another. Sparks flew as their weapons scraped the metal. The man grabbed one of the glowing tools as it clattered away, and for the first time, he held alien steel in his hand. The prisoners pressed closer to the walls of their cages, their eyes wide with disbelief. It was madness. It was suicide, and yet something inside them stirred. For so long they had seen only fear. Now they saw defiance. The commander's voice thundered across the room, demanding the man be crushed. Two guards attacked at once, their claws slashing down. The man blocked with the stolen tool, the clash sending a burst of light through the air. He gritted his teeth, his muscles straining, but he did not give ground. The woman struggled against her chains, the glowing cuffs cutting into her wrists. She wanted to reach him, to stand beside him, but she was locked too tight. Her voice finally broke free, crying out, not in fear this time, but in warning. "Behind you!" The man twisted just in time, ducking as another alien's claw sliced through the air where his head had been. He spun, driving the stolen weapon upward. The blade tore across the guard's chest, and a sharp, inhuman cry filled the room. Blood, thick, black, and steaming, splattered the floor. For the first time, the prisoners saw an alien bleed. The commander's eyes narrowed, the silver glow along his head burning brighter. He had underestimated this human. That mistake would not be repeated. "Enough!" the commander hissed, his voice echoing through the chamber. He raised his hand, and the machines on the walls pulsed with energy. The floor shook, and the glowing doorway at the side of the room flared brighter. The woman felt the chains pulling tighter around her arms and neck as the machines responded to the commander's command. Her breath came short, her chest burning with panic. The aliens wanted to end this quickly now. The man stepped forward, his weapon still in hand, his body bruised but unbroken. He lifted his chin, meeting the commander's gaze without fear. "You think we are weak," he said, his voice strong, steady, carrying through the chamber. "But we are not. Not today!" The commander tilted his head, curious despite his rage. He had seen humans cry, beg, and break, but he had never seen one speak like this. The prisoners pressed closer to the glass of their cages. Hope flickered like a small flame in their eyes. The woman's tears fell not only from fear, but from something new: belief. The guards reformed their circle, their glowing weapons raised. The commander lowered his hand, signaling for them to attack all at once. The machines hummed louder, the air thick with energy. The man tightened his grip, every muscle in his body ready. He knew the odds. He knew he might not survive. But survival was not the point anymore. The point was to show them, to show everyone, that humans could fight, that humans could resist. The moment stretched long and heavy. Then the guards rushed in, and the chamber exploded into chaos. The sound of weapons clashing, the sparks, the cries of pain filled the air. The woman screamed his name, though she did not even know it. The commander stood still, his glowing eyes watching every move, his smile returning, but it was not amusement now. It was recognition. He realized too late that this was not just another human. This was something else. The fight raged on, and the future of every prisoner in the room now balanced on one man's defiance. The first clash, the chamber shook with the sound of battle. The human fought with nothing but will and stolen steel. Yet every strike carried a weight the aliens had not expected. Their armor cracked under his blows. Their balance failed when he moved with speed they thought impossible. Sparks lit the air as claws and blades clashed, filling the room with a storm of metal and fury. The prisoners watched in silence, their hands pressed against the glass of their cages. They could not believe what they saw. A man, a single man, was fighting the very monsters who had broken entire worlds. For years they had bowed, obeyed, and feared. Now, for the first time, they saw one of their own fight back. The woman still knelt in chains, her breath sharp, her wrists bleeding from the cuffs. Yet her eyes did not leave him. Every movement he made drew her closer to hope, even as terror clawed at her chest. She wanted him to win, but she feared what the aliens would do to him if he did. The commander remained still, watching with cold eyes. His soldiers should have crushed the human quickly, yet each second that passed proved him wrong. The commander tilted his head slightly, his silver marks glowing brighter. He whispered something in his alien tongue, and the machines on the walls answered. The floor shifted beneath the man's feet. Panels opened, releasing small drones with glowing eyes and thin, sharp limbs. They hovered in the air, their bodies humming with energy. The guards stepped back, forming a circle around the man, while the drones closed in, buzzing like a swarm of mechanical insects. The human's chest heaved with heavy breaths. Sweat ran down his face and blood dripped from a cut across his arm. He gripped the alien blade tighter, his eyes never leaving the swarm. He had fought living enemies before, but these were machines, fast and precise. The first drone darted in, its blade flashing toward his neck. He swung hard, striking it from the air. Sparks burst as it crashed against the floor, twitching before it went still. But another followed, then another, moving faster than he could track. He ducked, spun, blocked, his weapon clanging against metal again and again. The woman screamed his name, though she still did not know it. It was not a word but a cry, raw and desperate, as if her voice could give him strength. He heard it, and his body surged forward with fresh rage. He struck faster, his movements sharper, tearing 2 drones from the air in a single swing. The commander's smile faded. His eyes narrowed as the man destroyed what should have been impossible to destroy. For the first time, doubt flickered across the alien leader's face. The other guards lunged, trying to overwhelm him. One claw tore across his side, and pain ripped through his body. He stumbled but did not fall. With a roar that echoed through the chamber, he drove his blade deep into the guard's chest, black blood spraying across the floor. The prisoners gasped. Some covered their mouths, others pressed harder against the glass, their hearts racing. They had lived in silence for so long, but now their silence cracked. A voice rose from one cage, a whisper at first, then louder. "Fight!" Another voice joined, then another, until the room filled with a chant. weak but growing stronger. "Fight! Fight! Fight!" The woman's eyes filled with tears, but her lips formed the word too. Her voice was soft, broken, yet it carried across the room. The man heard it, he felt it, and he refused to stop. He turned, his weapon slashing through the air, cutting another guard down. The drones circled faster, but he struck them one by one, his body moving with a fury no machine could match. Sparks lit the chamber like lightning, and the smell of burning metal filled the air. The commander finally stepped forward. His silver marks burned with light, brighter than before, and the room seemed to bend around him. He raised his hand, and the machine screamed in response, sending waves of energy through the floor. The man dropped to one knee, pain shooting through his body as if the very air wanted to crush him. The woman struggled against her chains, the glowing cuffs digging deeper into her skin. She screamed his name again, tears running down her face, begging him to rise. The chant of "fight" echoed, but the energy pressed harder, heavier, trying to break him. The commander's voice filled the room. "You are nothing," he hissed. A broken creature in a cage. "You will kneel." The man's body shook under the pressure, his weapon slipping from his hand, clattering against the floor. The prisoners fell silent, their hope dimming as the energy crackled stronger. The woman's voice cracked, her cry turning into a sob. Then, slowly, the man lifted his head. His eyes burned with fire, his jaw clenched tight. His hands pressed against the floor, pushing back against the weight. Inch by inch, he rose to his feet. His voice, rough but unbroken, cut through the commander's power. "No," he said. "We do not kneel." The prisoners erupted with a cry, their voices shaking the walls. The woman's tears turned to fierce determination, her body straining against the chains as if she too could break free. The man gripped his weapon again, the fire in his eyes brighter than the alien glow. The commander stared at him, his cold amusement gone. What stood before him was no broken human. It was something far more dangerous. Hope made flesh. The clash was not over. It had only just begun. Escalation, the chamber was no longer silent. The cries of the prisoners echoed. The hum of broken machines filled the air, and the sharp smell of alien blood mixed with burning metal. The man stood tall in the center, his chest heaving, his weapon dripping black fluid. His eyes burned with a fire that would not die, no matter how much pain wrapped around him. The commander's hand lowered, the glow fading slightly as he studied the human. His calm expression had cracked. He had expected fear, surrender, and silence. Instead, he saw defiance. Worse, he saw the other prisoners watching with wide eyes, their hopelessness changing into something dangerous, belief. "End this," the commander hissed. His voice was sharp like broken glass. The guards moved in, this time with precision. They did not charge blindly as before. They circled, their glowing weapons weaving patterns of light as they closed in. The drones that had survived hummed above, their eyes glowing red, scanning for weakness. The man tightened his grip on the stolen blade. His arm ached, blood soaked his side, and his strength was fading. But he would not let it end here. His gaze flicked to the woman, still bound in chains, her face pale but her eyes fierce. She was watching him with everything she had, as if her life balanced on his shoulders. He took a step toward her, but the circle of guards closed tighter. Their weapons hissed, slashing the air in warning. The drones swooped closer, ready to strike. The man spun suddenly, his blade slicing through the first alien who dared step forward. Black blood sprayed and the circle broke for an instant. He surged forward, cutting another drone from the air, sparks exploding as it shattered. The woman gasped, hope surging through her chest. She pulled against her cuffs, the glowing light burning deeper into her skin, but she did not care. She needed to move. She needed to fight beside him. The commander raised both hands now, and the walls of the chamber shifted. Hidden panels slid open, and more machines crawled out. These were larger, heavier, their bodies covered in armor. Their eyes glowed a darker red, and their movements were slow but powerful. Like predators who knew they could crush anything in their path, the prisoners screamed, pressing back against their cages as the machines stepped into the chamber. Their heavy feet shook the floor with every step. The man gritted his teeth, adjusting his stance. His body screamed for rest, but his spirit refused to bow. He struck fast, slashing at one machine's joint. Sparks flew, but the blade barely cut the surface. The machine swung its heavy arm, knocking him back. He crashed against the wall, the air leaving his lungs. The woman screamed, her voice breaking, but the man forced himself up again. His vision blurred, yet he raised his blade. The commander tilted his head, curious, as if studying a creature that should not still be alive. The prisoners began to pound on their cages, their voices rising into a desperate chant once more. "Fight! Fight! Fight!" The sound was weak, but it spread through the chamber, filling it with human rage and hope. The man roared, charging at the armored machine. He ducked under its swing, leaping onto its back, driving his blade into the glowing wires along its neck. Sparks exploded, lighting the chamber as the machine convulsed, its heavy body collapsing with a crash. The chant grew louder. The woman's eyes filled with tears, but they were no longer hopeless. They were fierce, alive. She pulled against her chains with everything she had, the cuffs biting deep until blood ran down her wrists. Still she pulled. The commander's patience snapped. His silver marks flared bright, flooding the chamber with white light. His voice thundered. "Enough!" The walls shifted again, but this time the glow focused on the woman. The chains tightened around her neck and arms, pulling her higher, lifting her off the ground. Her cry echoed, her body thrashing as the energy burned into her skin. The man's heart clenched. He turned, his blade dripping, his body battered, but his eyes locked on her. She was choking, struggling, her face turning pale as the alien machines dragged her toward the glowing doorway. The commander smiled again, cruel and cold. "Watch her suffer," he said. "Then you will break." The man's roar shook the chamber. He surged forward, cutting through two guards with wild fury. His blade tore through armor, his fists struck with bone-breaking strength. The prisoners screamed louder, their chant turning into a storm of voices. The woman's breath came short, her eyes dimming, but she fixed them on him. She did not speak, but her gaze begged him not to stop. He reached the chains, his blade slashing through the glowing cuffs. Sparks exploded and the woman fell into his arms. Her body shook with pain, but her chest rose with breath. She was alive. The commander's smile vanished. His silver glow burned brighter, so bright it hurt to look at. He stepped down from his platform for the first time, his tall frame towering over the human. The prisoners fell silent. Even the machines paused, waiting. The commander's voice was cold and steady. "You are brave," he said. "But bravery ends here." The man shifted, pulling the woman close behind him. His blade was raised, his eyes locked on the alien leader. His body was broken, but his spirit was fire. The final clash was coming, and everyone in that chamber knew it. Resolution and human defiance. The chamber was still for only a breath. The prisoners held themselves frozen, their eyes locked on the two figures who now faced each other. On one side stood the commander, his tall frame glowing with silver light, power radiating from his very skin. On the other stood the man, beaten, bleeding, yet unbroken, holding the woman close behind him. The silence ended when the commander stepped forward. Each step echoed like thunder across the chamber, shaking the floor beneath them. The silver marks along his head burned brighter, spilling light across the walls. His eyes locked on the human with a gaze meant to crush. "You are nothing," he said. His voice was not loud, but it carried with deadly weight. "You are dust. You fight only to die slower." The man's breath came hard, his chest heavy, but he straightened his back. His blade trembled in his hand from exhaustion, yet his grip stayed firm. His reply was steady, simple, and clear. "Then let me die standing." The prisoners stirred, whispers racing between them. They pressed closer to the glass, hope burning stronger now than fear. The woman, her wrists raw and bleeding, placed her hand on the man's arm. Her touch was light, but her eyes were fierce. She said nothing, but her presence told him what words could not. He was not alone. The commander struck first. With a wave of his hand, the air cracked with energy. The machines on the walls screamed, sending waves of force across the chamber. The man threw himself forward, rolling under the blast, the floor shattering where he had stood. He leapt to his feet, his blade slashing upward, sparks flying as it scraped across the commander's armor. The commander barely moved, his other hand striking down. A blast of light struck the man in the chest, throwing him back across the floor. He hit the wall hard, his body curling in pain. Blood spilled from his mouth, but still he pushed himself up. His arms shook, his body felt broken, but his spirit refused to surrender. The woman screamed his name, struggling to her feet, though her legs could barely hold her. She pressed herself against the chains that still held part of her body, trying to free herself. The commander's cold eyes flicked toward her, then back to the human. His smile returned, cruel and sharp. "You protect her," he said. "But she will be the first to fall when you fail." The man forced himself to stand, his body trembling but his eyes steady. He raised his blade once more, pointing it at the commander. "No," he said, his voice rough but unyielding. "She will live. We will live, and you will fall," the commander roared, his silver glow flaring so bright the prisoners shielded their eyes. He lunged, his claws slashing down with speed and power. The man met him head-on, his blade clashing against alien steel. The sound was like thunder, the sparks like fire. They moved fast, too fast for the prisoners to follow. The commander's strikes were heavy, each one enough to shatter stone. The man dodged, blocked, countered, his movements fueled not by strength alone, but by will. Every swing of his blade was desperate, but also precise. The woman watched, her chest heaving, her lips whispering silent prayers. She could do nothing but believe. The battle tore across the chamber. Machines collapsed, walls cracked, blood, human and alien, spilled across the floor. The commander struck the man again, and each time he stumbled, yet each time he rose. The fire in his eyes only grew brighter. At last, the commander raised both arms high, pulling every ounce of power into one strike. The chamber shook, the air burning with light. He brought his claws down in a blow meant to end everything. The man roared, lifting his blade with both hands. He met the strike head-on. The clash exploded with sound and light, shaking the entire chamber. The ground split beneath them, machines shattered, and the prisoners cried out as the shockwave hit their cages. For a moment, it seemed the commander's power would crush him. The man's knees bent, his arms shook, his blade cracked under the force. But then he heard the voices. "Fight! Fight! Fight!" The prisoners were shouting again, louder than ever, their voices shaking the glass, filling the air. The chant rolled like thunder, every word pressing strength into his broken body. The woman's voice rose above them all, sharp and strong despite her pain. "Stand!" The man's roar split the chamber. With one final surge of strength, he pushed back against the commander's strike. His blade shattered, but the broken edge drove deep into the alien's chest. The silver glow flared, then burst in a blinding light. The commander's scream filled the air as his body cracked and split, collapsing under the weight of his own power. The light faded. The commander lay still, his glowing marks dimming to nothing. The chamber was silent. The guards and machines froze, their movements faltering without their leader. The prisoners stared in shock, their mouths open, their hearts racing. The man stood over the fallen body, his chest heaving, his hands dripping with blood. His weapon was gone, his body broken, but he still stood. The woman rushed to him, her chains falling away as the machines around her powered down. She caught him before he could fall, her arms holding him tight. Her tears fell, but her voice was steady. "You did it," she whispered. He looked at her, his eyes heavy, but a faint smile touched his lips. "No," he said softly. "We did." The prisoners erupted, their voices rising in cheers and cries. The cages around them clicked open one by one as the systems collapsed. For the first time, freedom filled the air. The man lifted his head, looking across the room at the freed captives. His voice was weak but carried through the silence. "They thought we were weak," he said. "They thought we would kneel. But humanity does not kneel. Not today. Not ever." The words sank deep into every heart. The prisoners raised their voices, shouting, crying, their chains broken not only from their bodies but from their spirits. The human collapsed to his knees, the woman holding him close, but he was smiling. He had stood, he had fought, and he had proven a truth the aliens would never erase. Humans were not property. Humans were not tools. Humans were fire, and fire could never be caged.